World Order.
During mid to late 1996, the New World Order were easily the biggest thing going in professional wrestling. The wrestling world was legitimately buzzing when Hulk Hogan sided with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall at the 1996 Bash at the Beach pay-per-view, and WCW executive producer Eric Bischoff made sure to capitalise on the hottest storyline in professional wrestling by pushing the New World Order as WCW's main angle. Not only did Eric Bischoff create a team of bad guys who would never stop growing in numbers, and not only did Eric Bischoff create the most talked about wrestling storyline of the year, but Eric also created a brand with the New World Order. The nWo had its own distinctive look and feel, from the nWo logo itself becoming instantly recognisable not only in wrestling circles but in pop culture itself, to the New World Order's Jimi Hendrix sampled theme music. The nWo became more than just a faction and a storyline. The nWo became its own entity. It could seemingly exist outside of a Monday Night Wrestling show. Eric had, in many ways, hit the jackpot with the New World Order, and he wanted to not only generate revenue for Time Warner with his creation, but he wanted to turn the nWo into a media product. This went beyond your standard t-shirts and compilation videotapes. This went beyond action figures and posters. There were plans at one point to air a New World Order wrestling show that would coexist with WCW Nitro on TNT. You'll hear time and time again that the nWo added too many members, and while this may very well be true, there's an obvious reason behind it when you consider Eric's ultimate vision of having two separate brands in WCW and the New World Order. Long before Eric Bischoff changed WCW Nitro to nWo Nitro for a one-night experiment, Eazy-E tested the popularity of his creation by producing a pay-per-view event completely based around the New World Order. Happening on January 25th, 1997, nWo Souled Out was a spin-off pay-per-view that was completely clean of any WCW branding, a unique take on the pay-per-view attractions that Eric Bischoff was seeing success with over the past year or so. In Eric's mind, the New World Order had become so successful and so ingrained in contemporary wrestling that his nWo storyline and faction could host a pay-per-view that could attract both casual viewers and die-hard fans. Keep in mind here that the idea was to make people pay to see a show completely dedicated and branded towards a heel faction in professional wrestling. It was a risk worth taking. Eric understood the nWo was popular, and he himself wouldn't be out of pocket if the whole thing turned out to be a disaster. People like to call out WCW and Eric Bischoff for putting on the Souled Out 1997 pay-per-view, and while some criticisms do have merit, you have to respect Eric's decision to think outside the box in a relatively safe wrestling landscape, especially during late 1996 and early 1997. nWo Souled Out will never be anyone's favourite pay-per-view event, but the idea, the concept and the risk factor, I believe, complements Eric Bischoff more than disparages him. I will admit though that the actual event itself, from an in-ring perspective, left a lot to be desired. Eric Bischoff said, "We experienced a tremendous amount of growth in 1996. We clearly knew we had lightning in a bottle, and the very basic idea of creating warring factions and eventually allowing nWo to have its own pay-per-views and special episodes of Nitro was something I started formulating and thinking about during the last half of 1996. We then didn't have the challenge of producing WCW Thunder. At this point, in January of 1997, that mission didn't exist. We had the nWo that was clearly at war with WCW. Kevin and Scott had came in, and of course it started to build after that. Once it became obvious that this was becoming successful, the ideas already started ricocheting in my head that we were going to split the two brands. So take away the cool factor of the New World Order, take away the distinctive branding, and take away all the buzz and all the hype. What the New World Order was, at its very core, was a group of bad guys in wrestling. Not only were they your typical heel wrestlers, but they were almost impossible to beat via pinfall or submission. Week after week, the New World Order would gain the upper hand on WCW's finest superstars through strength in numbers, underhanded ring tactics, even a dodgy referee, which we will talk about a little more as this video progresses. If you're a younger wrestling fan, you maybe didn't care about this New World Order stuff. You didn't like the cheating and you cheered for the true babyfaces. You wanted to see the nWo get their comeuppance. On the flip side of this, if you're a die-hard wrestling fan who has been loyal since the Jim Crockett days, then you'd see the nWo as nothing more than a bunch of New York guys showing how skilled they are at collecting large paychecks for as little work as possible. Eric Bischoff may have struck gold from a television standpoint with the New World Order, but it was those die-hard fans who purchased pay-per-views, or it was the parents of the young casual fans. This was a pay-per-view focused around heels and wrestling. It becomes evident that it would be challenging trying to sell this kind of pay-per-view to the masses. Yes, there were WCW babyfaces at Souled Out, but the whole selling point itself was the New World Order. When questioned about the overall theme of nWo Souled Out, Eric said, "In my perspective as a producer, this pay-per-view was a means to an end. It wasn't an end and it wasn't a blow-off pay-per-view. This pay-per-view was structured as a vehicle and means to further establish the war we were trying to create between WCW and nWo, and we checked that box. There wasn't a lot of storytelling here. It was all about building the characters and further establishing the distinction between WCW and nWo. Really, it was an experiment. We did a lot of things on this pay-per-view that we wouldn't have done on a more traditional show. If you back it up all the way to the very beginning, to when we launched Nitro in 1995, I wanted to be different from the WWF. I can't overemphasize the success Nitro and the nWo had in being completely different from the WWF and attracting a new audience because of it. Everything that we did that was successful was out of the box. This pay-per-view was my way of taking that to another level and experimenting. And like any experiment, sometimes you're successful and sometimes you fail. WCW and WWF pay-per-views had never been this targeted before. The overall theme of nWo Souled Out would be so different from anything that had aired on pay-per-view previously, and Eric wanted people to pay money to see, at its very core, a bunch of predominant New York bad guys in the spotlight. The true experiment here was in the branding and notoriety of the New World Order. Adding in that cool factor and the buzz around the nWo was the trump card in all of this. There was definitely reason to believe that nWo Souled Out could be a success by just riding on the wave of popularity. Eric was banking on fans literally buying into the hype. Cedar Rapids, Iowa, January 25th, 1997. Here we are at nWo Souled Out. It's a strange location choice. Eric Bischoff explained that booking arenas in areas that never really got live wrestling would be an easy way to move tickets, but that's also a double-edged sword for obvious reasons. There could be a very viable reason as to why wrestling doesn't sell well in certain locations, but anyway, nWo Souled Out is the biggest wrestling show ever to happen in Cedar Rapids, and that says a lot. To highlight how different this broadcast would be in comparison to traditional WCW pay-per-views, head booker Kevin Sullivan had absolutely nothing to do with the event. He was completely against the nWo expansion due to fears of overexposure. The show opens up with the nWo arriving to the venue in garbage trucks with nWo flags. This opening has been ridiculed by many, and yeah, there's really no defending it. The whole nWo, led by Eric Bischoff, walk into the arena before a video package airs featuring Eric Bischoff giving a speech reminiscent of Citizen Kane. In this video, which I thought was actually done pretty well, Eric says, "I stand before you today humbled by the premier event that's about to take place. We are in control. To those of you who have risen to the challenge and joined the ranks of the nWo to change the face of the professional wrestling world as we know it, to you I say thank you, one and all. And to those of you who offered yourselves up as opponents, what the hell were you thinking?" We then get a look at the arena for the first time, and one thing I will say is that the arena looked fantastic for this show. The nWo branding was all over the place, from the ring mats to the entranceway where TVs were set up showing the nWo logo. It all felt very different, and this, as we just learned, was what Eric was aiming for. There's a sort of dystopian feel to nWo Souled Out that's hard to explain, but the production staff done an incredible job of making the show look like nothing we'd seen before from WCW and WWF. Eric Bischoff introduces the three founding members of the New World Order. Hall, Nash and Hogan appear on three separate screens, and this I felt was also a nice touch. I recently learned from Guy Evans' Nitro book that WCW senior editor Kemper Rogers actually had to play three separate videos at just the right time to make it seem like the nWo were talking to each other. These days this wouldn't be any trouble, of course, so learning that little bit of information made me appreciate the opening even more. Anyway, from this point forward, nWo Souled Out would be filled with ups and downs. More downs than ups if I'm honest, but let's look at the entire show. Ted DiBiase and Eric Bischoff provide commentary for nWo Souled Out. There's no announce desk, just Eric and Ted sitting on some production boxes. Chris Jericho comes to the ring for his match against the man who made the nWo International, Masahiro Chono. Jericho doesn't have any theme music, he doesn't even have a lower third for his name to appear on the screen. Neil Pruitt, the guy who lends his voice to the following announcement promos, and the guy known as the voice of the New World Order, can be heard making fun of Jericho as the Lionheart makes his way to the ring. This would be a common theme throughout the entire show. Nick Patrick is our referee for this match, and he's in the nWo's back pocket, so what we end up getting is a bunch of slow counts when Jericho tries to make a pin, and yes, this would also be a common theme throughout the entire show. Nick Patrick would be instrumental in most of these sold out matches. The Chono vs Jericho match then is kinda symbolic of the nWo as a whole. Y2J brings the fight while Chono doesn't really seem to care at all, preferring to just get through the match and nothing more. Show up, do what you need to do, and get to the back. During the match, we see Harlem Heat, Arn Anderson and other WCW guys enter the building, sitting in the audience to cheer for the WCW guys. Jericho tries his best to get a match out of Chono, but it's just not happening. There's a moment where Jericho is screaming for Chono to run the ropes, and you can't help but feel that Jericho is legitimately fed up of doing all the work. The crowd then begins to chant USA, which doesn't make any sense, but anyway, Jericho hits a pinning German suplex, but Nick Patrick performs a slow count. The audience boos loudly, but the match just continues on. The same thing happens once again. Nick takes longer to hit the mat for the 3 count, and so you now understand what this pay-per-view is all about and why a lot of people don't like it. A top rope spot is then botched. Chono sets up a table on the outside. Jericho eventually gets sent through the table. Chono delivers the Yakuza kick, and it's all over. Nick Patrick brags that Masahiro Chono is Japan's finest into the camera, and we have our first WCW vs nWo showdown in the bag. Chono vs Jericho sounds excellent on paper, it just didn't work, it's sold out. Eric Bischoff tells us that there will be a Miss nWo contest, and pictures are shown of some of the contestants who wanted to enter this beauty pageant. Bischoff later revealed that he sent staff out to find women who would eventually participate in the infamous contest, and Eric specifically requested that his staff did not bring back supermodels. The Miss nWo contest is one of the things this show is remembered for. It was an absolute train wreck where Eric would end up kissing the winner on TV, a lady named Miss Becky, who looked like she could be Eric's mother. The Miss nWo segments that ran between each and every match were led by Jeff Katz. Who is Jeff Katz? I hear no one ask, but I'll tell you anyway. Jeff's father was an executive at New Line Cinema, and a WCW events promoter wanted Eric to give Jeff a chance on TV. That's all there is to it, really. And that's all I'm going to say about the Miss nWo stuff. The interviews were awkward. The ladies didn't look like they knew what they just signed up for. They just sat around the entranceway with some biker dudes, and it just didn't work as a pay-per-view showcase. Eric Bischoff defended the beauty pageant by saying, It was designed to be the exact opposite of what people would expect the nWo to do. Everybody, including the Dave Meltzers of the world, would have probably booked the hottest girl they could find. I wanted to go the other way, and I did, and it didn't work. Anyone that's ever been in the business of actually producing television that will say to you they've never misjudged an audience is a liar, and they've never been there. Dave Meltzer falls into that category. Up next we have Hugh Morris versus the nWo's Big Bubba. For a little backstory, Big Bubba ended his association with the Dungeon of Doom to join the nWo, and so Hugh Morris was out for revenge. Yes, the Dungeon of Doom stuff was still going on in 1997. Hugh Morris doesn't have any theme music either, and Big Bubba comes down to the nWo B-Team theme song, a theme we would hear quite a lot through this entire show. This was booked as a Mexican death match. Conan was originally supposed to wrestle in this match, but funnily enough, he wasn't able to leave Mexico to attend this show. Anyway, you'd quickly forget this was a Mexican death match because Nick Patrick threatens to disqualify Hugh Morris quite a few times. I understand he's an nWo referee, but still. This one here wasn't great either. Nick Patrick slow counted at every opportunity, robbing Hugh Morris of any chance of winning. In the end, Big Bubba runs Morris down with a motorbike on the entranceway, and Nick Patrick suddenly wakes up, counting rather quickly to give Bubba the win. It's 2-0 to the nWo, and we are treated to more awkward interviews from the Miss nWo hopefuls. Eric Bischoff promises more exciting action next, Jeff Jarrett versus Michael Wall Street, and again, it's a story about Nick Patrick. This show should have been called Nick Patrick Souled Out at this point. Nick puts his hands on Jarrett early on, physically forcing Double J away from Wall Street, and this leads to a bunch of stalling. Deborah McMichael is watching from the audience, and she grows concerned for Jarrett as the match progresses, clearly seeing Nick helping Wall Street at every given opportunity. Eventually, Deborah pleads for Big Mongo McMichael to help Double J. Mongo hits Wall Street with the briefcase before telling Nick Patrick to make the 3 count. Although Patrick doesn't want to, he has no choice. Jeff gets the win, scoring the first pinfall victory for WCW. The problem here, though, is that absolutely no one cared about Jeff Jarrett, nor the outcome of this match. The first WCW victory couldn't mean any less in the eyes of fans. Next up, the American males explode as Scotty Riggs takes on Buff the Stuff Bagwell. It becomes apparent around this time of the show that the fans are getting bored with the action in the ring. Bagwell and Riggs goes close to 15 minutes here, and it feels like an absolute eternity when watching this one back. Neil Pruitt, the nWo voiceover guy, calls Scotty Riggs a loser on the PA system during the match. This provides a little bit of entertainment, but apart from that, this match really struggled with Bagwell leading the way for most of the bout. Guys like Bagwell and Riggs were really more conditioned for those snappy and quick television matches you'd see on WCW Saturday Night and WCW Nitro. Giving both men at the very most 7 to 8 minutes was already pushing it, so what you end up with here is a lot of time wasting. The guys really didn't know what to do to fill up time, it seemed. Buff Bagwell gets the win with the blockbuster. You'll miss nothing of significance by skipping this match. Diamond Dallas Page takes on Scott Norton next, another match that sounds exceptional on paper, and a match I quite enjoyed even though it was very short. Norton easily overpowers Page at the beginning of the bout, but DDP is able to outsmart Norton and bring him to the mat. As Norton begins to swing things back in his favour, the audience suddenly makes a lot of noise when we see Sting in the arena watching the match from the crowd. Back to the match, and Norton is dominating Page on the outside. The guys working the PA system are getting a little trigger happy with the loser soundbite. The novelty has already worn off. Page begins rallying back, and after DDP hits a DDT, members of the nWo B team come to the ring led by Buff Bagwell. Bagwell asks DDP to join the nWo. Keep in mind that DDP already refused an offer on Nitro from the Outsiders that led to Scott Hall taking the Diamond Cutter. Page says he's in, he puts on the black and white colours, and he shakes hands with Scott Norton. Page then pulls Norton in for a Diamond Cutter before running off into the audience, the exact same way he refused the Outsiders on Nitro. It gets the desired crowd response here at Souled Out though. Nick Patrick rules the match in Norton's favour, Page gets counted out. We get more Miss nWo nonsense before our next match. The Outsiders defending the WCW Tag Team titles against the Steiner Brothers. Out of all the New World Order members we have seen so far, in early 1997, maybe Hall and Nash were the only guys who were truly over in the United States. They brought a certain star power to the New World Order, and so this was really the first match that felt significant. It was a fun match too, not great by any means. It does get slower and slower as the match progresses, but in comparison to what we've just seen, and the caliber of superstars we have had on display, this match went a long way in waking the audience up a little. And on top of this, Hall and Nash seemed motivated here, something that many consider a rare sight during this era of WCW. Kevin Nash took some big bumps from Scott and Rick Steiner, doing an impressive sell job here for the Steiner brothers. The bout falls into familiar territory though, as Rick Steiner needs to make the tag. He can't get to his corner, and you'd expect the fans in attendance to rally behind the suffering babyface, but it feels like the audience is a little underwhelmed at this point. Nick Patrick takes a bump, Rick and Scott Steiner get the better of Scott Hall while Nash is on the outside, and WCW referee Randy Anderson, who has been watching the show in the audience, jumps out of his seat to count the pinfall. New tag team champions are crowned at Souled Out, and the audience suddenly comes to life at this rather unpredictable outcome. Eric Bischoff said on commentary that this is a grave injustice and there will be consequences. The next night on Monday Nitro, Eric reversed the decision and the titles went back to the Outsiders. The best match of the show came up next, United States Champion Eddie Guerrero taking on Syxx in a ladder match. You could always count on Eddie Guerrero to deliver the goods in WCW. Those of you who watch the Reliving the War series on my channel would know that Eddie worked hard in World Championship Wrestling, and this match here is no exception. And say what you want about Sean Waltman, but when he was on, he was on. He could fly around the ring delivering a unique moveset, and he could bump like a champion when needed. And also, he never really got lazy. Ladder matches were a rarity in WCW too, so this was a treat for fans who exclusively watched Turner's wrestling show. For those wondering, by the way, Syxx stole the US title, hence why he's wearing it while coming to the ring. High risk aerial offense, suplexes to the outside, the ladder coming into play and being used as a weapon. It's a great match all around here, and yes, it has been surpassed numerous times in the years that followed, but you have to remember that this is the beginning of 1997. With the correct mindset, you'll have fun with this one, and honestly, with the exception of the production of the show, it's one of the only essential reasons to check out nWo Souled Out. Both men unhooked the belt at the same time, Eddie hits Syxx with the belt, and Guerrero wins the match. Eddie celebrates with the WCW superstars in the audience after the match. The winner of the Miss nWo contest is revealed, and Eric Bischoff gives her a big sloppy kiss afterwards, you know, because he wanted to be different than the WWF. Whatever you say, Eric, whatever you say. This all went on way too long, nobody cared, and it came across as embarrassing. Our main event features the Giant challenging Hulk Hogan for the WCW Championship. The Giant won the World War III Battle Royal in '96, and therefore he had earned a WCW title shot against Hulk Hogan. Hogan refused to give the Giant a title shot the night after Starrcade, and Hogan made fun of the Giant for losing to Lex Luger at the same pay-per-view. This all led to the Giant getting kicked out of the nWo and Hogan putting the title on the line. It Souled Out. To be honest, and I've said this before, but I don't think this Hogan vs Giant match is as bad as others make it out to be, at least in comparison to their previous matches. We had just sat through a painfully mediocre show at this point too. It's very difficult to get excited for Hogan vs Giant to end Souled Out, but try watching this one before watching everything else. Like the Outsiders, Hogan seemed motivated here, and while there is the standard stalling to waste time and whatnot, there's still decent action here when things pick up. After some back and forth, Hogan hits the leg drop, but the Giant gets back on his feet. The Giant hits the chokeslam and it looks like we have a new WCW champion. But then you remember that Nick Patrick is the referee for Souled Out. Patrick only counts to 2. The Giant keeps pinning Hogan over and over again, but Patrick simply refuses to count to 3. The nWo then run to the ring, but the Giant is able to take care of the heel faction. Hogan then uses a guitar that was passed to him by Eric Bischoff, and the Giant gets destroyed. There's no bell to end the match, so I think this was a no contest. Anyway, Giant gets nWo spray painted on his back. The audience chants "We want Sting," but the Stinger doesn't make an appearance. The show ends with Hulk Hogan playing air guitar with the WCW Championship, and yeah, that was nWo Souled Out. With the experiment now in the bag, Eric Bischoff waited anxiously for the buy rate numbers, and it must have been quite a blow when Eric got word that nWo Souled Out attracted only 170,000 pay-per-view buys. Not bad by today's standards, you may think, but consider that Starrcade drew 345,000 buys the month before, and Super Brawl 7 the month after brought in 275,000 buys. You can instantly tell that the experiment didn't work. As a matter of fact, Souled Out was WCW's worst 1997 pay-per-view in terms of buy rate. It's not that Eric misjudged the popularity of the nWo, but Eric was asking fans to buy into a novel pay-per-view concept featuring a heel faction, and fans were very right to be wary of the show. Those who did buy Souled Out in 1997 were disappointed by the in-ring action. Only Syxx and Eddie Guerrero truly delivered a show-stealing performance, and word quickly spread that nWo Souled Out was a weak show filled with ridiculous one-side officiating and a weird beauty pageant. I said earlier that the arena looked good and the whole aura of the show was on point, but once you see that for the first 5 minutes, then you're left with what's in the ring, and the show just didn't deliver in that respect. Thankfully, Eric had the sense to think twice about putting on another nWo themed pay-per-view. A special thanks to my supporters on Patreon who are helping me to continue making these videos. Today's Hall of Famers are Julian and Mike. Mike runs an auto detailing YouTube channel where he presents complete interior and exterior detailing videos along with product guides. Check him out when you get the chance. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you all on Wednesday for Reliving the War.